Good morning or afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of Recruit Military Live, where we will be discussing the top ways the military community can be leveraging LinkedIn for maximal military transition success. And as an added bonus, we will be doing a live practical exercise at the end of our episode, so stay tuned if you'd like to be involved. As always, my name is Gabby Pettigrew, and I am joined by my wonderful co-host, Raul Torres. How's it going your way, Raul?
Hey, it's going great. We survived a tornado watch here yesterday in Dallas. But
Oh my
outside of that, everything's good. How's stuff in the desert? How's the weather?
I mean, we had something similar. We had like zero to no visibility with a crazy dust storm that happened over the weekend. And like I'm driving back and forth with my two little ones. So I'm like, okay, well, so we're staying we're staying home the rest of the weekend because it got pretty bad. So you got a couple steps up from us with just a dust storm. So glad everyone's safe though.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, I'm actually very excited about today's guests. We usually do meet up with our guests prior to these live sessions, and there's so much that we connected on. And I'm actually really excited about what we're gonna do today. I don't want to give anything away before we get into it. But our guest for today is a retired U.S. Army veteran with over 25 years of combined military and federal government experience. He currently serves as the Veterans Program Manager for the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, where he focuses on veterans and military spouse outreach, employment, and support programs. He's a dedicated advocate for the military community. He also volunteers as a federal military family network liaison with the Interagency Veterans Advisory Council. In this role, he promotes military spouse hiring initiatives and contributes to interagency collaboration on veteran and family related topics. Throughout his career, he's helped countless veterans and military spouses navigate career transitions by offering mentorship and support in areas such as VA claims, job searches, resume writing, interview preparation, and job offer negotiations. He is passionate about helping others and finding purpose and achieving meaningful careers. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in giving a warm welcome to Keith Kassan. Keith, welcome.
Hey, good afternoon or good morning to some of y'all. How's everybody doing today?
Fantastic.
Awesome, phenomenal.
Awesome.
Happy hump day to everyone.
Yeah, so thank you guys so much for having me on. I'm super excited to be doing this. A little nervous, not going to lie about that either. But yeah, my name is Keith Cassatt. That intro said it all. I'm not even going to touch on any of that. If I do reference my agency at all, it is a mouthful, so we just say CISA for short. So I'll just refer to them as that if I do reference them at all. But yeah, I'm kind of here today. They asked me to come on and talk a little bit about LinkedIn, but networking, right? And how LinkedIn can be used in all that, right? I'm going to throw out the disclaimer right away, right? LinkedIn is not the end all be all to networking, right? But it can be a very powerful tool if you know how to use it effectively. And the approach that I take to it isn't, not everybody always hears about this kind of way and this method. So yeah, hopefully you all learn something today. I do have some slides. Trust me, I was an instructor in the Army for 6 years. I don't do death by PowerPoint. I do have a few slides just to make some points, but I'm not gonna be reading from those slides. You're just gonna be highlighting a few things as we go. And I also like to use a little bit of humor if I can. So with that said, I didn't get it quite fully preloaded. Let's see.
Oh, I got you.
Window. Nice.
Hey, look,
Okay.
Marines, we get it done, right? Okay.
You do. Awesome. Boom. All right. And we're already on to the second slide. So, all right. So, so first and foremost, what I like to do is when I'm working with somebody, and we start diving down this journey of networking. Now, I may have had this conversation with them before we talked about the networking side, but if we're just going to talk about networking, I still feel like we need to start with doing our homework first, right? And that involves the question of what do you want to be when you grow up, right? Because the whole point of this networking, as at least as we're going to cover it today, is for the purpose of employment, right? Or expanding your professional network, but it's always looking for maybe that dream job, right? So all that to say, I always want to start out, what do you want to be when you grow up? So with that said, I always ask people the perfect job scenario. Now, I will argue to the ends of the earth that the perfect job does not exist. Okay, it just doesn't. And we'll probably even drill down on that a little bit more as we go along. But all that to say, if, for argument's sake, in a hypothetical situation, it did exist, the pay was perfect, the location was right where you wanted it, the hours were whatever, either, how you made your own hours or they just worked with you, the people you worked with were they're amazing, right? The job was perfect. What would the actual work look like?
Mhm.
And that's the way I kind of get the gears turning, I guess you can say, with folks, right? Now, what that perfect job looks like, that whatever comes to mind first may not be what you're going to run out and go get, right? Director of an HR department organization somewhere, that might not be the first job you land, especially if you're coming out of the military. But all that to say, it's a starting place, right? Whatever pops into your head as that perfect job, let's drill down on that. Maybe it is something you can do right away. Case in point, I met a gentleman, I was working with him, and he was looking to pivot into cybersecurity because that's the primary industry I kind of work in. And every time he talked about cybersecurity, he always followed it with this statement of, because that's where the money's at, right? That's where the money's at. That's where the money's at. And he kept saying it over and over and over. And I finally said, okay, time out, real quick. Said, let's just pause. And I asked him the perfect job scenario. I said, what would you do with the perfect job? Or what would you be doing in the perfect job? And he goes, you know what? I'd open an orphanage.
Mm.
Well, why are we talking about cybersecurity then, right? And we drilled down on this whole path, right? And because I'm like, cybersecurity, it can pay well. Don't get me wrong, right? But I've met so many veterans, especially service members, especially. They try to pivot into the industry, and there's nothing wrong with the industry, but they don't necessarily realize what they're getting into, and they realize 6 to 8 months in, they spent all this time and even financial resources and stuff like that, and they realize I don't enjoy this at all. All right. So why not do something that you think you would enjoy in that perfect job scenario? So in his case, I was like, well, we may not be able to go get a loan for an orphanage right away, but let's drill a lot down on that and figure out what the root of that is. Why do you want an open orphanage? In the end, he realized, I just want to help people. Right. I just want to be of assistance to people, especially people in need, people that are maybe, lacking or something of that nature. So now he's working for a nonprofit. He allows me to share his story in an anonymous way, but he works for a nonprofit helping people, and he's couldn't be happier. Is he getting paid as much as he does? It could have maybe in cybersecurity, who knows? But he's happy. And so therein lies the purpose of just trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up first. All right, next slide, since I'm not controlling them.
Okay.
So the reason we start there, right? What do you want to be when you grow up is because we need to narrow our focus. There is no shortage of jobs out there. Granted, if you're looking for federal employment, that's been cut down quite a bit, and that's a whole other conversation I don't have time for today. But all that to say, searching for a job, it's not a run and gun game, right? My kids are gamers. They tell me that's the phrase, run and gun, Call of Duty, whatever.
Spray and pray.
Right? Yeah, spray and pray. Yeah. That's another great. It's not a spray and pray, right? It's not a shotgun blast game, right? And it's a sniper's game. But I can't tell you, I hear almost on the daily, I work with veterans and speak to them, and they're like, transitioning service members mainly, and they're like, I shot out 50 resumes last week. And I'm like, that's awesome. And you're not going to get a call back on a single one, right? Because the amount of, and again, this isn't the topic of today, so it's for a whole nother conversation, but just trust me if you don't know, when I say that the amount of time that it takes to properly tailor an impactful resume that is going to make get traction and be noticeable and noticed and make an impact, it's this considerable undertaking, right? When I first started tailoring resumes, just in the private sector alone, it was about 4 hours on average, right, to tailor one resume. Federal resumes, I averaged about 8 hours per resume. Nowadays, I work at this for a living, so I'm a lot quicker, but still, it takes me at least an hour to tailor a civilian resume properly for a job I might be interested in. So all that to say, with all that time intensity, you can't be spitting out 50 a week. So let's narrow our focus and try to drill down on what we're looking for. So the headline actually kind of got a little cut off. It should say, narrow your focus, companies, not jobs. So my approach is, once we figure out what we want to be when we grow up, now it's time to start hunting, right? Hunting like a sniper. Because how do snipers fight? They identify a target, they study it, they stalk it, and they take calculated shots at it. So that's the approach here. So with that, we search for the companies. Let me just see in my notes here. Yeah, so I'll drill down on this, and then we'll. I'm trying to think now. See, I don't have my own slides going, so I'm like,
No, no,
I'm
you're
all over
fine.
the place.
There was one thing I did want to mention, which on
Sure.
your first note of just helping that veteran realize, asking that simple question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And pinpointing that anchor point, what makes you happy? Like what brings you joy? And that may help a veteran that is just lost in the sauce, like they've been doing logistics, or they've been a grunt and they absolutely don't want to do that for their civilian career. Okay, cool. Scratch what you've been doing for the last 4, 8, 12 years. What is it that brings you joy? What is it that you would see yourself enjoying doing for the rest of your life? And that in itself could give that veteran that leeway, that guidance, and then open up a whole other world of opportunities. As you mentioned, from the veteran that you assisted, wanting to work in cybersecurity, you're like, oh, but I can see myself hating my life. Like, being behind it. It's very important work, but is it something that you want to do? And now he's working, for a nonprofit, working with assisting people, realizing that was the anchor point for him, and what he wanted to do opened up that whole other perspective and world of opportunities for him. And then taking that, and then, as you mentioned in this slide, narrowing your focus, like now pinpointing from then on areas to go and search for. Okay, now how exactly do you want to help people? What areas do you find? Then focusing more. So I think just that point alone, it may sound like a silly question, what do you want to be when you grow up? But it can open the doors to a lot of different pathways.
Absolutely. And you kind of bringing up another point that I like to mention too to folks is, because again, I said earlier, right, the perfect job doesn't exist. And that the phrase of, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. I hate that phrase, right? There's that insinuates that there's a perfect job. There is no such thing. Every job is going to have its bad days, or there's going to be certain aspects you don't care for in that job, right? But the dream job absolutely does exist, right? And that's the point of this. We're trying to find your dream job, and your dream job will probably lie within your passions. So yeah, let's identify what those are. With the main question, then now let's find companies that are typically offering those types of jobs. Now that you figured out what you want to be when you grow up, find the organizations that offer those jobs more often than not. Because again, you jump on LinkedIn or wherever, you search a job title, and there's tons and tons and tons of job openings in this area, right? So look for themes, right? Look for the companies that tend to be offering these jobs more often than not. Then, as this slide is saying, now we can tighten that shot group even more, because again, we're snipers now, right? We identified our target, right? And now it's time to tighten that shot group. For all my non-veterans and service members, maybe we have some military spouses, they're like, what the heck is that, right? Shot group is when we go into the rifle range, we're zeroing our weapons, right? We're initially getting our weapon, focused on the way we aim it, yada, yada, yada. And we call the shot group where the rounds are landing, where the bullets are landing. And the tighter that group is, the more accurate we're going to be on our rifle. So this adage of tightening that shot group even more, because we figured out what we wanted to be, right? That's a huge shot group. Our shots are all over the place. Finding 3 to 5 organizations that tend to offer those jobs, that's still a pretty considerable undertaking. So now we can use what you see on the screen here, these 5 things, to tighten that shot group even more. So what are these 5 things on the screen? These are what I call the 5 things to love about a job. Okay. If you noticed, they're not numbered. They are bulleted, and that is intentional. These are in no particular order. Okay. But these are the 5 things to love about a job, right? We tend to get hung up around the top one the most, right? Which is funny, because statistics have shown time and time again, or studies have shown time and time again, that people usually take a job for money, but they leave a job for the culture because of the leadership usually, but even just bad culture in general. So all that to say, these are the 5 things. So money, I get it. It's important, right? You got to put the food on the table, keep the vehicles gassed up and insured, and keep the bills paid. Totally get it, right? That's why it's on the list. But there's another thing, hours, right? Flexible hours versus rigid hours. Some of us were very spoiled in the military. We didn't realize how spoiled we were, where we had a doctor's appointment at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We just told our supervisor, hey, I got this sick call appointment. I'll be back, right? Tomorrow, I'll see you tomorrow. Not always that way in the private sector. I used to work at Wells Fargo, where I was a branch manager. It was a 9 to 5 brick and mortar role. So if I had a doctor's appointment at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I either had to take leave or I didn't get paid. Not knocking the company. It's just the nature of the job. So hours is the second thing. Location, right? Are you looking for remote work? Are you looking for telework? Are you willing to go to where the work is, right? Are you looking to stay close? Do you want to travel, right? All those types of aspects come into the location consideration, a thing to love, right? Then the fourth thing is the people, right? Which really does speak to the culture. But the people you work with, do you get along with them? Is the culture healthy? You know, toxic work environments is a big thing nowadays. Mental health in the workplace is a big thing nowadays, as it should be, which is why that's the fourth thing to love. And then last but not least, the actual work. Again, the work you're doing, right? We talked about finding our passions and all this kind of stuff, but some folks don't really care what they do. Their job is just there to fund their hobbies. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. Case in point, when I was very young in the Army, I met a gentleman. I went to the gym one day. Gentleman was handing out towels at the gym, and we struck up a conversation. And basically, long story short, he's a retired E8, retired first sergeant in the Army. And he was like, when I retired, and he just retired like 2 years prior. He's like, when I retired, I'd lived that senior leader life, and I swore I would never have a job where I was responsible for anything other than just myself ever again. He goes, I hand out towels at the gym for a living, and I can't be happier. And you could see it. It was all over his face, right? He was loving life. What's that?
Oh, you just said, I mean, whatever works, whatever makes you happy, everyone is different. So whatever brings you joy.
Right? Exactly.
I love that these aren't numbered, by the way, Keith, because I can almost bet the deeper you are into your career, the more experience you have, the importance of each one of these might switch around.
Yes.
So you might start out, hey, it's all about that money. I want to be in this industry where the money's at, and then at the very end, maybe it's people, the culture that's like the most important at the end of your career. So I love that these are not ordered in any specific way.
And that's the great segue to the next thing I need to mention, because you're going to order them, right? They're not ordered, but you, whoever's listening, you need to figure out what your top three are, because you do have a top three, right? Because again, you're never going to find all five. That insinuates there's a perfect job. I'm in my dream job, and I'm in the decimal points. I'm in like a 4.2 out of 5, right? Because there's still things I would change about my job if I could, right? But statistically speaking, if you identify what your true top three are, and you can find a job that will satisfy or provide you those top three, statistically speaking, you will be happy in that job, right? If you can find a job that gives you 4 out of your top 5, you will be extremely happy in that job. And if you're in your dream job like I am, you're somewhere in the decimal points, probably between 4 and 5, right? But as Raul just attested to too, you might even get them wrong. I did. So I didn't realize the actual work was that important to me. I thought as long as I'm getting paid and everything else is good, I'll be happy. How wrong I was. And it wasn't until I got my first federal job, which was working for the Coast Guard as a federal civilian with them, where I was, they called it a C-school scheduler. My Army folks, that's like an ATARS manager. Air Force, I don't have an equivalent, but basically I scheduled training for Coasties. The money was decent, had no financial worries whatsoever. The hours were amazing. My bosses, I was as flexible as you can get. My bosses were like, as long as you give us 40 hours, we don't care when you work them. So some days I'd start work at 5 a.m. and be off at like noon or 1. I worked from home 3 days a week, teleworking, so the location was perfect. And the people I worked with were amazing. I had 4 out of the 5. And I was miserable. Absolutely miserable, because there was no work satisfaction whatsoever. And I didn't realize that was in my top 3. I realized it in that role. Oh, wow. Okay. What I'm doing, that sense of purpose, if you will, is way more important to me than I realized. So I had to rearrange my top 3. But yeah, that's a great point to that. All right. So figure out what our top 3 are. And then next slide, we're going to start infiltrating, right? We're going to start trying to break in. My approach, again, we're searching for the organizations, not the jobs initially, right? So we're going to find the organizations that offer the jobs, and we're going to start infiltrating them. So networking takes time. Networking can be quite the undertaking and daunting even in some ways. So find 3 to 5 organizations that seem to be offering those jobs you're looking for more often than not. And then the end goal is to find 3 to 5 people that are willing to have some conversations with you within each of those organizations. Folks that are willing to meet with you on Zoom or Teams or or if they're local, offer to buy them a cup of coffee, right? Because face-to-face interactions are always going to be more impactful than anything virtual. So the whole point is we're trying to just take up residence in their brain, right? Have some interactions with them, make a good impression. But the whole point being is then we've dropped a seed in their mind. So when a position possibly opens up, or you find a position that opens up and you reach back out to them, hey, I'm super excited for this opportunity that just opened up in your company. I'm going to take my shot. And I really just want to thank you for your time. You didn't ask them to do anything. But if they know who that hiring manager is, and if you've networked properly, the chances are they do know who that hiring manager is. They're going to try to throw your name out there for a couple of reasons. One, everybody loves the feel-good story of, hey, I helped so-and-so get this company or get this job, right? But two, a lot of organizations have referral bonuses, right? I would argue the healthy ones do, because referrals is how we keep an organization healthy more often than not, which actually I think is going to lead me to my next slide. So I think next slide. Yep, the why. So why am I going down all these rabbit holes talking about all this stuff? Why is networking so powerful? Why are these statistics out there that say 70 to 85%, give or take, of all jobs are attained with networking, right? That's a huge number. Roughly three out of four out of every job that person selected is somehow, some way, either directly or indirectly known to that hiring manager. So why? What a lot of people don't realize is, as a hiring manager, my job is not to pick the most qualified candidate. It's not. That's my recruiter's job. Everybody, if my recruiter is doing their job properly, everybody that hits my desk can do this job blindfolded with their hands tied behind their back. Right? So my job, so what is my role? My role is to find the best fit. The best fit for my team, the best fit for the organization, the best fit for our culture. The culture that we're trying to establish and or maintain. And that's really hard to do off of a stack of papers. I'm gambling on resumes as to who might be a good fit for my team. But therein lies why it stands to reason that if somebody comes to me, somebody with clout with me, somebody with relationship with me, somebody who's already a proven fit for our culture, if they come to me with your name in their mouth, you just became a safer bet on the gambling that I'm doing on these pieces of paper. And that's why it gives you such a humongous leg up on the competition, right? We don't tend to preach the why behind all this. That's why it's so effective, right? So, there it is, right? So now that we know the why behind this, let's start talking about how we do this, right? So I've given you a bunch of ways to drill down, find the organizations, why you want to find the organizations, all this. So now let's start talking about some actual real, okay, Keith, that's great. I know I need to network, but how? All right. So next slide. First and foremost, do not neglect the network you already have. That one got cut off too. There should be the word have in there. All right. Do not neglect the network you already have, especially my veterans or transitioning service members, right? I don't care if you did 4 years or 40, right? You served alongside folks in uniform. Some of them got out before you, right? Or even if you've been out for a while, some of them have gotten out since you've gotten out. Where are they at, right? Because if you're like me, anytime you've gotten a new one of these things in the last 15, 20 years, the old contacts from the old phone rolled over onto the new one. So you probably got hundreds upon hundreds of people in this thing. Have you sat down with this thing and looked everybody up on LinkedIn? Right? Again, LinkedIn's not the end all be all, but this is where it starts to become a very powerful tool. Look these folks up. Where are they at? What are they doing? They might be in a role or an organization that you are trying to infiltrate. Or, I didn't even realize that organization existed, but that's the type of role I want to do. Let me reach out to them. Because again, networking takes time. And these are folks you don't have to, they already know who you are. They already know what you bring to the table, right? So start there. Start with the network that you already have. I'm living proof of all this, folks. Since I've retired from the Army, I've had 5 jobs. 4 out of my 5 jobs I got through networking. I knew somebody on the inside. 2 of those 4 were old Army buddies, guys that I had served alongside in uniform. And one of the 2 Army buddies was my first NCOIC, my first shop supervisor at my first unit back in 1998. We hadn't served together in 15 years, right? Not in a million years did I think this man would all of a sudden have a lead on a job for me. But it led to my first job in the agency that I work at now. I've had 2 jobs in this agency, but he also works in this agency, right? And so that's how powerful this can be. And, he knew I was looking, saw a job opening. He's like, hey, Keith, you'd be a perfect fit for this position. And, oh, yeah, by the way, wink, wink, I know the hiring manager. Right. Again, yeah, that's the key, right? All
Not
right.
easy.
No
It can
point in
be.
reinventing the wheel. I mean, I've mentioned it multiple times on previous lives, but I've had two jobs since exiting out of the Marine Corps in 2019. One I got as a by name referral from another female veteran who had gotten out as well, but we did not serve together. We did not know each other outside of me hiring her as a photographer for some family portraits. It's what she was doing at the time in North Carolina. And when she was leaving her position, she thought of me right away because we had the same job, the same MOS in the military. We had great conversation just while we were mingling, taking photos. And boom, that's how I got my first contract job on base. This position I got from a LinkedIn post that Raul had shared, who I'd served with, 2 or 3, 4 years in Camp Lejeune. So everything is just maintaining, just having conversations with people, not even knowing that you're networking and not knowing where those relationships are going to take you in the future, what doors those are going to open, what that conversation is going, what kind of impression you're going to leave just from having a conversation with someone who you share similarities with. And then boom, oh, I know someone who I think would do phenomenal in this job. Let me throw her name in the ring. And of course, I still had to go through a round of interviews, but I don't think I would have even ever known about the position, maybe had, a really good shot if it weren't for that by name request, a referral. So it's exactly that, Keith. There's no point in going through all this extra effort, exerting all this extra energy and stressing yourself out, trying to create a new network when you literally have a gold mine at your fingertips.
Absolutely. Right. But I am an advocate for ABN. Always be networking. Right. So there is value to expand this network. So we're I noticed I'm looking at the timer. I'm like, oh God, we got it. But I really, so today we're hoping to do a practical exercise. So I actually have my LinkedIn. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. And then would you mind actually answering this quick question that we have from Moises? It was from our previous slide, but he mentioned, what about the companies that use an AI or, the applicant tracking system to scan resumes for top candidates? What is the workaround or how to best approach that?
That's a great question. And I will answer the question from the private sector, because I also do a lot of mentorship for the federal sector, and it gets a little bit more long-winded for the federal side, but on the private side, it doesn't matter. I mean, every company has its own policies on how they recruit and stuff, but in my experiences in the private sector, especially, they're not nearly as restrictive. And so as a hiring manager, if I hear your name and you've applied for that job, I can go to that recruiter and be like, hey, pull so-and-such's application. In addition to all the other ones you're going to send me, I want to see so-and-so's. And most companies don't have a policy against that. So yeah, even if you're AI, now don't get me wrong, I am never neglecting the importance, the absolute critical importance of tailoring an impactful resume, but that's a whole nother webinar for a whole nother day, right? But when you have a very highly tailored, impactful resume and you've networked your way into that organization, oh boy, you can't get a better shot at the interview. Right now, this is all just to get there, right? All bets are off once you get to the interview, but I would even argue you kind of walk into that interview with a little bit of a halo effect going on, right? But yeah, all that to say, if the organization for some reason doesn't allow a hiring manager to have the authority to go to that recruiter and say, hey, I want to see somebody by name in addition to all these others, then yeah, you might get blocked by that AI if your resume is not tailored enough, which is why I advocate for that. But in the private sector, especially, hiring managers usually have a lot of power and ability to do just that. Hey, I heard so-and-so's name. I want to see their application in addition to everyone else's. So hopefully that answers the question.
Just that extra effort. I think we can't, beat that into the ground enough. Making that extra effort, putting in just a few extra minutes of sending that note, especially if it's someone that you're not maybe local to, that you are willing to travel for a certain position, but you're reaching out, you're doing your research, you're making that contact and making yourself known, advocating for yourself. That is going to stick in the recruiters, the hiring managers' head and bring you to the front of their mind. So thank you for answering that.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right. Am I able to share? You're able to see my screen?
Not yet.
I think maybe you.
see.
Okay, there we go.
There it
Look at
is.
that. Sweet. All right. So for everybody listening in, if you don't mind, first come, first serve. I want somebody to put in a job title that is preferably for their dream job in an organization that they would think that they prefer to work at. So as quickly as possible, first come, first serve. A job title in an organization that would probably have that job available. We're going to do a quick practical exercise. If I don't get any takers, I'll put Raul on the spot.
Yeah, put me on the spot.
And then, Keith, are you
Give me a
able
hypothetical
to
job.
zoom in just a bit so we can see on your screen?
Sure. Yeah,
Maximize
absolutely.
it a bit more. Awesome.
Yep. And while we're waiting too,
Oh, there we go. We
for-
got strategy planning principle for FedEx. Let's go, Peter.
nice. Let's do it. All right, Peter, you're the lucky guinea pig. All right, so
Come on down.
so all that to say, just a real quick plug too. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with everybody on this call. You see my profile right now. I'm the only Keith Desant in the entire world, so it's really easy to find me. Just search my name and you'll find it. All right, so Peter was the lucky guy. So again, practical exercise, right? So we've leveraged the network we already have, but now we want to ABN. We want to. It's a sniper's game. We're going to start studying our targets, taking calculated shots at it. So now let's start to infiltrate the organization. So again, using the companies, the organization as the main catalyst for this, I'm going to go to that organization's LinkedIn page, right? So I'll go to FedEx. Now, again, maybe an organization doesn't have a LinkedIn page, but nowadays most everyone does if they're any kind of substantial size. Now, there's a couple ways you can do this. A lot of people will go down here to what's this people tab here at the bottom. I don't care for it because what I'm about to show you, the search functions that I'm about to show you don't always work as well if you go to that people tab. So what I tell folks to do is you see the organizational title there, right? And then you see this grayed out font along the end there. That last element is also a hyperlink. So when I click on it, it gives me a list of everybody that is A, on LinkedIn, and B, works at that organization, right? So now I've got 184,000 people that I need to network with. No, right? I'm not going to be able to network with 184,000 people, but we know what we want to do, right? We have that dream job. We know what we want to be when we grow up. So now I can use this search bar at the top, and well, I'm going to copy and paste what he wrote. I'm not going to try to spell that out. Wasn't too bad, but putting in the search bar and using quotation marks, right? I'm going to put that job title in and hit enter, and it's going to whittle that list down to me. Oh, 18. That's a much more manageable chunk of folks that I can try to network with, right? So now I've got 18 people that are at the organization and either currently or have previously done the thing that I'm looking to do in that organization. I got 18 people I'm going to try to reach out to. Now, I encourage you to reach out to like 20 or 30. So you may want to even change the job title a little bit, or if you could still have a big list, you can use like the locations or any of these other filters. You can use locations, you can use past companies. Hey, maybe they're a veteran, you can add a company in one of the military branches and see if that narrows it down to them. Ultimately, find about 20 to 30 people to reach out to, because you're not going to hear back from all 20 to 30 people. Some of these people just aren't active on LinkedIn. Some of them just don't care, whatever it might be. But the end state goal of all this is what I said earlier, 3 to 5, right? We just want to get 3 to 5 people that are willing to have conversations with us, right? Willing to just jump on a call or have a cup of coffee or whatever it might be with us. So in this case, 18, that's a great starting place, right? So I'm going to go through all 18 of these pages, but before I'm not just going to send off connection requests willy-nilly, right? I'm going to look at their profile first. Because when you were sending out a connection, right, you may have heard this before, this may not be too new to a lot of people, but when you're sending out a connection request, you want to send a message with it. You don't want to just send a blank one that's empty, right? So what do you say in that message? Well, the more connection that you can make in that initial message, the more likely they are to respond. So look through their profile. Are they local to you? What have they done for previous roles? Where did they go to school? Where are they physically located? Whatever it might be. Is there any way that you can make that some kind of connection? Like, hey, I see that you went to such and such university, so did I, or whatever, right? Now, in this case, maybe you don't have any way, right? No similarities with this individual. At the end of the day, most everybody on this call, I think at least, veterans, military spouses.
Mhm.
Everybody loves helping the military community. So at a minimum, always use that. Hey, I'm a transitioning service member, or hey, I'm a veteran, or hey, I'm a military spouse, and I'm really interested in what you do for FedEx. Can we talk? Right? Again, you send that message out to 18 folks. Hopefully you hear back from 3 to
Mhm.
5. Maybe you hear back from more and it gets a little overwhelming. You pick and choose. But the again, the whole point of this being, I want to try to find some folks, trying to stereotype and find a great example. But all that to say, I like to use my agency sometimes when I do this faculty exercise, folks. My agency, we're 40% veteran staff. Well, we're a federal agency. There's a drawdown right now. I don't know what those numbers will look like when we're done, but
Yeah.
when it's all said and done. But at last check, we were 40% veteran staff, right? So you got a 40% chance in my organization of whoever you're looking to reach out to is a veteran, right?
Mhm.
Veterans love helping veterans. So that's usually one of the best ways, go through this list. Did they serve somewhere? Again, I struck out with this guy. I'm not going to go for strike three and be out. So, but hopefully you see where I'm going with this, right? And then again, you just reach out, you have some conversations, 2 to 3 conversations with these folks. You build some rapport, as I said it earlier. The end game to all of this is if this organization's offering the type of jobs that you want to get, you reach back out to these folks when that job opens up, or they might hear about a job opening up and they call you, hey, so-and-so just put in a 2-week notice, send me your resume. And you're really going to leg up at that point, because that happens quite a bit too. But even if they don't, right, you have a few conversations, build rapport, have a good imprint in their mind. So then you reach back out, like I said, hey, this job just opened up. I'm going to shoot my shot. I'm super excited. And I just want to thank you for your time. Again, if they know who that hiring manager is, which if you've done this properly, there's a good chance they do, they're going to try to throw your hiring manager into that, or you're going to try to throw your name into that hiring manager's ear. Right?
And just that
that's my
message
approach.
alone could show so much. It shows the initiative, it shows the willingness and the eagerness, and the excitement to work for an organization, to take on that position. So making that connection, sending that message just over, a platform like LinkedIn could make a world of difference, like you mentioned.
Mhm.
And this is actually the same exact process I used, Keith, getting out in 2021. And same exact thing, except I even tailored it further how you were explaining, like you could find veterans as well.
Mhm.
And it's that simple. So I'm glad this is still like an active way. It's kind of like a respectful way to like stalk people. You know what I mean?
Cyber stalk people.
Absolutely.
Cyber stalk people, just go
Yep.
down and see what connections you have, and tailor even those messages to make sure you get a response back. So
100%. Yeah. So, and yeah, Raul mentioned in what I'm kind of doing right now to see if I could not totally strike out is adding those past companies, add those branches, because again, veterans love helping veterans. Start adding all the branches and see if somebody pops up, that, hey, they maybe they weren't your branch. Even better if they were, but even if they weren't your branch, just the fact that they're a veteran is still a huge leg. You're still a huge connecting factor for them. So I'm striking out, but
I think, but even with justice process, because this is something I didn't do. I just prayed to the Lord. We lost him. But this is something that I wasn't even, fully aware of. I think I took on more. I'm more of a naturally anxious person. So it's something like a platform like LinkedIn, even, back 5 years ago or so, before it wasn't as popular as it was now, or seen as much as of a tool as it is now. We individuals like me tend to welcome back, Keith.
yeah, I meant to stop sharing my screen and I clicked the wrong button. Technical difficulty, my bad.
No, I was just mentioning that I love, Raul mentioned that, he utilized kind of this search process during his departure from the military as well. I wasn't even aware that we could do, such a detailed search process, but I think I'm just more naturally intimidated by things like this. You go onto a platform like LinkedIn and it has that professional kind of, stigma about it, where you have to just mind your P's and Q's, and it just seems very intimidating. But knowing that something like this, such as a simple but yet effective search process like this, and how instrumental it can be during your career search journey, is amazing. And, we're already, like Stephen mentioned, this has been great information. Thank you, Stephen. And it is just that. And there's a phrase that I learned when I first joined this organization. That was, you don't know what you don't know. Every week and every guest that we've had, I've learned about a new resource. I've learned about, new tips and tricks and guidances and resources for not just the military community, but this could be applicable to anyone and everyone going through that job search process, and can alleviate so much of that stress and anxiety and already a stressful and anxious time, which is job searching.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, not to ever knock the organizations that are out there trying to help the service members that are transitioning, especially, the TAP contractors and stuff. They do the best they can, right? But it takes a village. That's why, I say I'll never run short of clientele and customers, because 200 to 250,000 of us are leaving the branches or the uniform every year, and there's not enough mentors of us out there. So organizations like Recruit Military are doing such a phenomenal job. I'm right in their backyard at their, where they're headquartered at, and I'm up in Virginia Beach. I know a few folks that work at Recruit Military personally, and it's what they do, or what you all do, is an amazing resource. And there's also no shortage of resources out there for service members. It can be an overwhelming, I call it the sea of goodwill, which actually I'll do a shameless plug. I stole that phrase from a now employee of Recruit Military, Paulina Thompson. I don't know if she's listening in, but she coined it, and I stole it from her, the sea of goodwill. But all that to say, you've seen the statistics: 44 to 47,000 organizations registered with the IRS just for veterans. That's huge, right? So therein lies my biggest adage, my what's the word, moniker, if you were, mantra is: find a mentor, find 10, right? Because, like you said, even as mentors, we don't know what we don't know. Where I'm not an expert in everything. I'm not the end all be all to everything. There's things that you can learn better from other people. Happy to help you in your journey, but don't make me your end all be all. I can't be your single point of failure. Find like 10 mentors, build a board of advisors around you that you can lean on and run things by. And we can all leverage our strengths to help you, because it takes a village to help a service member transition out effectively. So
1,000%.
And I wanted to, since we're plugging things, we might as well do our own
resources.
Plug. Speaking of resources, we appreciate you coming on, Keith. I know we're like time bound, but if for those listeners out there, if you want to get more, if you need more information, we do host a LinkedIn masterclass. You can find that on our website, recruitmilitary.com. Just go to the job seeker tab and take a look at our resources, find the webinars on there. We have other ones like civilian resume webinar, federal job, advanced employment workshops, hiring event prep. So take a look at those and make sure you utilize every single advantage you can get, because there's a lot out there for the veteran community.
Yeah, we'll ensure to drop that link to our seminars in the chat as well, so y'all can easily access it. Keith, we can't thank you enough. If we could, we'd have you on for another hour. The amount of information that you have and the wealth of knowledge. And if you haven't been thanked lately for all the work that you're doing, especially now, in the state of everything, the work you do for the veterans and the military community and transitioning service members, all that you have done, all that you will do, we greatly appreciate it. And then coming on here today and sharing such valuable knowledge is greatly appreciated. So thank you.
It's my pleasure and my honor. I truly appreciate you all having me on here. So.
Absolutely. And thank you everyone for joining us for an amazing episode of Recruit Military Live today. And we will see you next time. Have a good one.